The other month, as part of Summer Games Fest, Naughty Dog revealed The Last of Us Part 1, what they called a faithful remake of the 2013 hit single-player narrative-driven zombie game. The reveal came in the form of a 90-second announcement trailer, mostly showcasing updated visuals with a few narrated story beats. They released some side-by-side comparison shots as well. These really highlighted the graphical upgrades, and at first glance, I would say this all looked really great, although there were some unanswered questions. Like, besides the visuals, specifically, how were they improving the game? Were there going to be any big changes? And what, if any, new additions would be included as well? The game's PlayStation Store page gave a few hints at what we could expect. Most interestingly, the key features list said this would be an all-new experience. A total overhaul of the original, faithfully reproduced but incorporating modernized gameplay mechanics, improved controls, and expanded accessibility options. There would also be improved environmental storytelling, effects, facial animations, and enhanced exploration and combat. Similar comments were made over on a Naughty Dog blog post about this reveal. They said, "We've implemented modernized gameplay, improved controls, and expanded accessibility. Effects, exploration, and combat have all been enhanced." While vague on the specifics, them saying that the remake would include modernized gameplay mechanics, improved controls, and enhanced combat left most people assuming that they would be taking some of the gameplay advancements that were seen in The Last of Us 2 and then bringing them back into the remake of Last of Us 1. However, at the time of the announcement, no further details were given. That was until recently. Thanks to a new video released just this week, we finally got specific answers as to what exactly is new, what's changing, and what is staying the same. And as you can probably tell by the title of this video, many people, myself included, are not particularly happy with some of what we learned, and I want to dive into the specific reasons why. So first, let's take a look at that recently released 10-minute video. This was titled The Last of Us Part 1 Rebuilt for PS5 Features and Gameplay Trailer. It gave us a behind-the-scenes look at the changes that are coming with the remaster. The biggest and most notable improvements are, of course, the visuals, and they look great. We've got some technical enhancements like support for 4K, HDR, and 60 FPS on the PS5. I am certainly hoping that they can push that frame rate higher for the PC release, but hey, 60 is better than what the original cap was. Along with that, they've done a complete pass of all of the game's textures and animations. Literally everything. The environmental art, the lighting, the effects, the character and facial animations, it's all been redone, and it all looks significantly better, as it probably should, given the original was 10 years ago and it's been 8 years since their first remaster. There's also higher density of physics objects, which helps with the world feel more authentic. More materials in the environment will have the properties you expect, like breaking glass, exploding debris, and collapsing walls. All of it's going to be a lot more realistic looking. They've also enhanced the AI, which was based off of the work they did for The Last of Us 2. Enemies are now more aware, with improved communication, making them more adaptive to your actions and really amping up the intensity of combat engagements. Companion AI has also been improved. They're going to be a lot more aware of enemy locations and able to adjust positions accordingly. This is a real nice improvement, as I recall Ellie not having the best stealth AI in the original game. She would just like walk right out in front of people, which kind of broke the immersion just a little bit. Animations got an upgrade via motion matching. This technology matches your movement against hundreds of possible animations and then displays the ones that make the most sense based on what's happening, which translates to just much more natural looking animations. There are also additional gameplay modifiers, new modes like permadeath and speedruns. There are more cosmetic unlockables, from clothing to backpacks and weapons. Tons of new accessibility features. This is really cool and opens up the game to a lot more people getting to experience it. They revamped the art direction for most of the game's environments, which looks really great. There's new and improved 3D audio for further immersion, and lots of feedback enhancements for if you play on the PS5 and use the DualSense controller. All of these changes look and sound pretty great. I am especially impressed with how much better the visuals are. They have made some pretty clear improvements here. I think when the first reveal trailer came out, there were a lot of people saying this looks just like the original. It wasn't until those side-by-side comparisons started being shown around that we were realizing, no, of course, it is drastically improved. Although for a lot of people, that original game, especially especially the remaster from 8 years ago, still looks pretty good. At the time, that art direction, the overall visual fidelity, the appearance, it was all really, really good, like top tier for when it was released. And it's aged pretty decently as well, but nevertheless, these are clearly some big improvements. So with that said, what is the controversy? This so far sounds pretty good, right? Well, it's not so much about what they've shown as much as it is what they didn't show. Namely, people are upset that there appears to be none of the gameplay improvements seen in The Last of Us 2 added into the remake. Things like the ability to dodge attacks or to go prone, just to name a few. None of the new movement or combat features, no new interactions or functionality, nothing. Based on what was highlighted in this video, there are no significant changes or improvements to gameplay at all. That, coupled with the price tag, which at its base is going to be $70, that is the new baseline for PlayStation big budget releases, a bit more if you want to go for the digital deluxe edition. All of this has had people asking, is that price worth what it is we're getting? Now, to be totally fair here, I do want to note that just because they didn't show any new gameplay elements in this video, it doesn't mean that there aren't any to be seen. I do think that there's a possibility those things just weren't featured in this particular bit of coverage, but we may see it later down the road. I am not counting on it because this did appear to be a complete feature overview, but I do just want to leave the window open, it is a possibility. If we go back to that list of features, they claimed that for the remaster, they've implemented modernized gameplay, effects, exploration, and combat have all been enhanced. This has me wondering, okay, so which part of what was shown here would classify as modernized gameplay or enhanced combat? Does the improved companion and enemy AI fit the bill, or the more dynamic character animations? And if not, where is this new and improved gameplay and combat? Maybe it's the case that they still have got more to show and we just haven't seen it yet, and they'll show it at some point in the future. I expect, however, that this is probably it, especially with them emphasizing this as a faithful remake. Adding new gameplay systems wouldn't technically fall under a faithful reproduction. But again, where are all those modernized gameplay mechanics and enhanced combat that they mentioned? I have no idea. It wasn't in that video. Is it just not there? That is the current going assumption. Now, that said, even if there are big improvements that they have yet to reveal, that still doesn't address what is, for me, the larger disappointment. I'm not sure if there's a particular name for my affliction, but I love tacked on multiplayer modes that come in some single player games. I made a video recently about how much I just adored the multiplayer in Mass Effect 3. Well, The Last of Us multiplayer holds a similar place in my heart. It was just really fun, which leads me to my biggest complaint about the remake, and that is that they are not including the multiplayer mode. It's literally just not in the game. And for some, this will be a pretty big deal. For others, not so much, right? You may have played The Last of Us for its story. That is what it's known for, of course. It's the main draw, right? But for me and for others like me, they're missing most of the game, in the sense that I sunk a significant amount of hours into the multiplayer, way more than I did the single player campaign. The total amount of time played in multiplayer far exceeds how long it took me to beat the game. If we are equating hours to value, most of my value in The Last of Us was in the multiplayer. I don't necessarily think we should equate hours played to value. There was a lot of value in playing through and experiencing that story. It was very memorable. It is one of the top gaming experiences of my life. It's certainly valuable there. However, no multiplayer, and the fact that the game is still full priced, that's hugely disappointing for me, because yeah, I really enjoyed it, and most of my time with the game was spent in the multiplayer. It's kind of crazy. Not including multiplayer in their remakes has become something of a Naughty Dog tradition. They excluded the multiplayer modes in both the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection as well as the Legacy of Thieves collection. And I have to assume that they do this because they have not deemed the extra work as worth it. Clearly, there's likely not enough people who play these modes for them to think that it needs to be included. Now, I'm not sure if the multiplayer in the Uncharted games had quite the same following, but I know for sure that The Last of Us Factions does have a pretty devoted fan base. Now, Naughty Dog did explain why Factions was excluded from The Last of Us Remake. According to them, it's because they're making an entirely new standalone multiplayer game. Speaking with Jeff Keighley at Summer Games Fest, Neil Druckmann provided some details, saying, "What started out as a multiplayer mode has evolved due to the team ambition. They really wanted to do something beyond what we've ever done before at Naughty Dog, and we felt the way to do it justice was to make it a standalone title." He went on to provide some basic information, saying that they've been working on this for the past 2 years, that the game is as big as any of their single player titles, and in some ways even bigger. It's got its own story with brand new characters and takes place somewhere unique in the United States, and that the game is being headed by veterans of both the Uncharted and Last of Us series, and we should expect to be learning more about this game in the coming months. And honestly, this sounds great to me. Like, I love the idea of a big standalone multiplayer Last of Us experience, but at the same time, it is pretty clear that this is going to be totally different from what Factions multiplayer was in the original game. We are obviously not just getting an updated version of that smaller scale 4 vs 4 mode. In fact, my money is on this being a massive open world PvP experience, quite possibly. In other words, completely different in just about every way from Factions, which leads me back to the question of why was this removed from being included in the remake? If it really is, as I suspect it to be, way different, could they not have still updated the visuals and included Factions in the remake? Well, yes, of course they could have. Obviously, they could have done this. It could have been part of the remake in conjunction with this completely separate game that they're making, but they chose not to do it. So why? Maybe it's because they just didn't want to do the work, knowing that they are also in full production of a separate multiplayer specific game. They've been working on it for 2 years, like he said. So they said, hey, we've got a multiplayer thing coming. We don't feel like wasting time in this multiplayer component of the remake of the original game. Or maybe it's because they didn't want the Factions multiplayer to compete with their upcoming multiplayer exclusive title, although I don't think that would be the case, assuming it's as different as it is likely to be. We don't know the exact specific reason why. I am going to assume it's just because they didn't think it was worth the time and they wanted to just focus on the multiplayer exclusive title, but it also doesn't even matter. Even if we don't know the why behind it, the reasoning behind it, we do know that it's just simply not there. An entire mode just not included in the remake that they are charging full premium price for, and it's a major shame. And frankly, I think people have a right to be disappointed about it. I am quite disappointed about it. All in all, I do think that The Last of Us Remake looks pretty good, but with it lacking so many things beyond the visual upgrade, I mean, it's got a lot. The Last of Us Remake does have a lot to it. It does look significantly better. They have made massive improvements in a lot of fields. Questioning how much is actually changing within the gameplay, and that aside, just the fact that they are excluding a whole mode, which again, for myself, is a good 50% of the experience. It's way more than 50% of my playtime with that game. That is absolutely for certain. I know that's not the case for everyone. I know The Last of Us is known for that single player narrative, but it was part of the original game. They are remaking that game, and there's just a whole bit of it that it's just not there. It should be. It's a remake. It should be. Whether or not they're making a separate multiplayer title, it really should be. The Last of Us Part 1 will be launching this year. It's coming to PS5 on September the 2nd, with a PC release planned for some time later, although there's no specific time frame as of yet. And I do think that this is probably the biggest selling point for the remaster. The fact that we're getting a PC port is great, as it means a lot of people who didn't own a PlayStation console and haven't played The Last of Us will get to experience it. That, along with there just being a visually updated version of The Last of Us for anyone who didn't play it but did have a PlayStation console, that is also really nice. While I don't agree with how it's being expressed by a lot of people online, I do think that this is a pretty clear-cut case of if you don't think the game is worth the cost, simply don't buy it. The narrative and the tone around how that's being said online, it's just not a good look, really. Because the larger picture and many of the complaints are centered around the whole idea that what they are charging is out of line with what's being offered. And to that, I absolutely agree. They're asking full premium new game price for a remaster that excludes an entire portion of the original game. It's pretty audacious, if you ask me. Now, I haven't played The Last of Us since the PS4 remaster released back in 2014, so 8 or so years ago. I love the game, hands down. It is one of my all-time favorite video game stories and video game experiences, and I would be happy to revisit and play it again, but not for the price of $70, given that it's nearly exactly the same with updated visuals, and especially not considering the exclusion of that multiplayer. It's not a huge loss, as I've already played the game, but it is disappointing, I think, how they went about doing this remaster. I appreciate and respect the amount of time and effort that clearly went into this. They've certainly done a lot of work, but $70 for so much missing and not a ton of new additions and improvements. I don't know, man. But you know what? Hey, it has been 8 years since I played the game last, so I can wait 1 or 2 more until the inevitable sale that takes place. Like, the game will be cheaper at some point. This is very much a patient gamer moment. We will wait to purchase this until the value lines up with the amount of money that's being asked. That is going to do it for the video today, guys. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoy the content. See you in the next one.